Almighty God, we pray for your blessing upon this council. Help and prosper its work for the advancement and benefit of its people, so that peace and happiness, unity and justice may be established among us all. Amen. Manningham Council acknowledges the Wurundjeri Wurrung people as the traditional owners of the land and waterways now known as Manningham. Council pays respect to elders past, present and emerging, and values the ongoing contribution to enrich and appreciate the cultural heritage of Manningham. Council acknowledges and respects Australia's First Peoples as traditional owners of lands and waterways across country and encourages reconciliation between all. Manningham Council also values the contribution made to Manningham over the years by people of diverse backgrounds and cultures. I welcome all members of the public here tonight who have joined us in person and online to observe tonight's proceedings. I would like to advise that tonight's meeting is being audio and video recorded. All care will be taken to maintain your privacy. However, as a visitor in the public gallery, your presence may be recorded. By remaining in the gallery, it is assumed your consent is given in the event that your voice or image is broadcast by Council. Council meetings are conducted in accordance with our governance rules. I will introduce each item of business as listed on the agenda, calling it by number and by reading the title. I will then call for a mover and a seconder of a motion on the item before opening any debate. Only councillors are able to join the debate on an item. Councillors may adopt the officer's recommendation in the report or propose amendments and supplementary motions. I would like to draw your attention to item 7 on tonight's agenda, public question time, which provides people with an opportunity to ask questions of the council. Council has allocated 30 minutes for question time at tonight's meeting, and the process for public question time is set out in our governance rules. Questions must be received prior to the start of the meeting to be asked. Where we receive advance notice of a question in accordance with our governance rules, by 5 p.m. yesterday, we will provide a verbal response to the question at our meeting. Questions we receive today up to 7 p.m. may be taken on notice if we don't have the information to provide a meaningful response on hand. If this happens, you will be provided with a written response to your question within 10 working days from today. I will deal with a maximum of 2 questions per person and 2 questions on any one issue. You will be asked to come forward to the lectern to ask your question, where you will have the opportunity to provide a 2-minute introductory statement before asking your question. If you have more than 2 questions, please submit these additional questions in writing to Council through the normal channels. To ensure the efficient conduct of our meeting and maximum participation during question time, all questions and answers shall be as brief as possible and no discussion is permitted on any question. Councillors and the gallery are reminded that question time is to be conducted in a respectful manner and any disorderly conduct will be managed in accordance with our governance rules. Item number 2, apologies and requests for leave of absence. There are no apologies. Councillors, are there any requests for leave of absence? None noted. Item number 3, prior notification of conflict of interest. No prior notification of conflicts of interest have been received. Would anyone like to give notice of a conflict of interest? None noted. Item number 4, confirmation of minutes. Do I have a mover? Councillor Laura Mayne.
I move that the minutes of the council meeting held on the 26th of April 2023 be confirmed.
Thank you. A seconder?
I second the motion, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Item number 5, presentations, and there are no presentations. Item number 6, petitions. 6.1, parking restrictions in Rose Street, Doncaster. Do I have a mover? Councillor Carly Lane.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the petition with 23 signatories requesting Council to remove the current parking restriction in Rose Street, Doncaster, and replace them with new restrictions to enable residents only to park between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. be received and referred to the appropriate officer for consideration.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Michelle Kleinert. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Kleinert?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. 6.2, footpath construction in Carlton Court, Templestowe. Do I have a mover? Councillor Kleinert.
That the petition with 13 signatories objecting to Council's plans to construct a footpath in Carlton Court, Templestowe be received and referred through to the appropriate officer for recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Anna Chen.
I second the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Kleinert, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Chen? I will put that to a vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Item number 7, public question time. So we have received 2 questions for tonight's council meeting. Anyone submitting a question to council will have the opportunity to read out their question or can choose to have the question read out by our CEO. Our first question is from Simon Conisby. Simon, would you like to come to the lectern? So Simon, you have 2 minutes to make some introductory statements before asking our question.
Okay, thank you. Hello, my name is Simon Conisby. Firstly, that is my mother, Mrs Janice Conisby, and I would like to thank the Mayor and the Director of City Services for their reply to our letters, or their reply letters to our letter dating the 27th of April 2023 regarding Masson Square. We'd like to thank them for the following: considering our accessibility ideas and safety concerns, confirming that there will be no change to the footprint of Masson Square, letting us know that all potential applicants for the design phase of the Masson Square project have been informed that they are no longer required, and the communication methods in which the public will be informed about the upcoming minor amenity and safety works for Masson Square. However, we still have the following 2 questions. Question 1. As the proposed $3.2 million redevelopment of Masson Square has been cancelled, what is the scope and the schedule of the replacement minor amenity and safety works that will now form part of the Manningham Council's normal asset maintenance program for Masson Square? So that's scope and schedule for it. And question 2, when will the scope and schedule for the replacement minor and amenity safety works that will now form part of the Manningham Council's normal asset maintenance program for Masson Square be communicated to the public?
Thank you,
Thank you.
Simon. Thank you. I'll ask the Director of City Services, Rochelle Quattrocchi, to provide you with a response.
Thank you, Simon, Conisby and Janice, for your question. Just in addressing the first item, we are to implement a program of amenity and safety works, as you have mentioned, Simon, at Macedon Square. This will occur during the 23-24 financial year as part of our asset renewal and maintenance program. These works will be similar to those undertaken across our other local shopping centres to ensure that we keep these areas safe and that people feel safe moving in and around those centres that they visit and shop within. Officers are currently working through the details of the program for Macedon. However, it will include safety measures such as bollards, repairing of broken pavers and footpath, curbing and channel, and also replacement of trees and minor landscaping works. The first stage of the works will be to install safety bollards. Information about starting date for these proposed works will be communicated over the next few weeks. The Economic Development team will be directly involved to ensure the works are completed with minimum disruption to traders and visitors to Macedon Square. In relation to the second question you had, in item 2, we will ensure that traders in the community are informed before any work is undertaken, and they're provided advanced notice of what works are to occur. As mentioned, the first stage of the works will be installing safety bollards, and information about the starting date of these proposed works will be communicated over the next few weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. Our next question is from Yameng Su and Patrick Grosvenor. Are you in the chamber? Yes. Would you like to come to the lectern? So you have, again, 2 minutes to make introductory statements and then ask your question.
Over the last few years, Ross Street has gone from what was a quiet street to substantially busier than previously. We believe that it's become substantially more dangerous on the street. Also, in regards to the street itself, we're worried about the condition of the trees along the roads. This is something that we have actually raised last year, October. We have heard nothing back from the council. We have raised it again, but we have not heard anything back. We have been told that this is due to external contractors being the ones who inspect the trees along the street. And it sounds like it's passing the buck onto the contractors at this point. Our questions are, what are the other ways that we can request to escalate the tree inspections? We have had damage to our property and we have had to pay for that out of pocket. The second question is if speed bumps could be installed on Ross Street to reduce the risk of car crashes. We have seen 3 outside our house. Thank you.
Thank you for asking your questions, and my apologies that you've not received a response in the last few months. I will ask Rochelle Quattrocchi, the Director of City Services, to respond to your questions.
Thank you, Patrick, for your question. And I do acknowledge also that it's disappointing you haven't received a response on this matter. We are committed to providing response to our customers, and I will give an undertaking that that happens following this meeting. However, I will just point out to you there are a number of ways that you can make contact, as you probably are aware, by contacting our customer centre or online. There's different forums, but there's also a complaint process as well that you may not otherwise be aware about, and I will send you some information on that following this meeting. But I will give a commitment to you that we follow up on the matters that you have mentioned. In regards to the investigation of looking at safety measures in the street, that's something we can investigate and also provide a response to you in relation to that. Thank you.
Thank you again. Thank you for your questions. I'm now going to move to item number 8, admission of urgent business. And there are no items of urgent business. Item number 9, I should say, planning permit applications. 9.1, planning application PLA 22/0031 for an amendment to planning permit PL 14/024793 at 1026 to 1030 Doncaster Road, Doncaster East. Do I have a mover? Councillor Lightbody.
Yes. I move that the recommendation be adopted.
And do I have a seconder? Councillor Goff. Councillor Lightbody, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. Briefly, the history of this application is that the original application was rejected by Manningham at the time and then overturned at VCAT. So what we have before us tonight is an amendment to the already approved planning permit. This amendment brings the quality of the building and apartments up to the current minimum standards, which are required by new developments, but not for existing. So this is a good move to increase the quality of the housing that is proposed and not required under the existing permit. So that's a positive for the planning application. The design has also been improved and includes more communal spaces. We've also heard a number of objections and submissions regarding this application, and I'd like to thank the officers for negotiating and working through some of these issues, particularly around daylight and overshadowing as best as they could. And there was also some concerns regarding parking. So there was a number of concerns that the current amendment reduces the number of parking spaces in the building, which it does. But there is, however, still more parking within the building than is required by the planning scheme. So while there is also a small allocation of parking for visitors, under the planning scheme, the building is actually not required to have any due to its location along a primary transport route, which is not saying that I agree with the requirements of the planning scheme, but that's not for us to change. We're here to implement it tonight. And as it stands, the applicant is providing levels of parking above what is currently required. There's also another new requirement in the permit that ensures that the building has the infrastructure to provide future electric vehicle charging to all parking spaces within the building, which will become mandatory later in the year, but only for new permits approved after that date. So this is also a beneficial outcome for future residents. Overall, this building is an improvement on the previous design that VCAT approved. And while not everyone will be supportive, particularly around parking issues, this is a good example of local governments being able to work with applicants to deliver some better outcomes. I will highlight that unfortunately there's no allocation of affordable housing in this development, and that's partly due to the fact that the state government refuses to allow councils to make it a requirement in their planning schemes. Instead, it is a negotiable that councils can seek to undertake, which we do seek to undertake. I think that's it for now.
Thank you, Councillor Lightbody. Councillor Goff, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just a couple of words, Madam Mayor, and Councillor Lightbody did an excellent job outlining, I suppose, one of the major things that has happened with this application is that it's actually fitting with the apartment design guides, the new state government apartment design guides, which give minimum heights to ceilings. It gives minimum light. Windows have to be facing to outside. Now, quite a number of other energy initiatives within that these now have to comply with, because if it went through with the previous one, it wouldn't have had to comply with. And he's quite right, because of the location and the principal public transport network, they have been able to utilise or drop off a number of spaces. But may I say that it still meets the requirements in the total number of spaces for that particular unit as it goes. So again, went off to VCAT. VCAT said, come back here and get some words around it, and council have done so. So I hope we all support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have any speakers against the motion? Do I have any other speakers for the motion? Councillor Stephen Mayne.
Yes, just noting that this is, I think, the first planning application that's come for council since February last year. So it's been probably an unprecedented drought of applications. And I know later on in the night we'll see the quarterly report up to the end of March that developer contributions budget is running about 1.6 million behind where we thought it would be. And that goes to the dearth of residential housing construction in Manningham at the moment relative to what we were expecting. And with all the talk of housing shortages, I'm hoping this is a development that actually can be delivered as opposed to just permitted, because we do have a very large influx of residents and students coming into Melbourne at the moment, and we're hearing all these stories about the housing pressures. So I think the officers have done a good job. When it's quite a straitjacket when you're dealing with a VCAT permit. So we have to abide by that, and I think it was good constructive working with the officers. There's 11 pages of conditions. Overall, it's a better proposal than what came previously, and looking forward to it actually being delivered, because there is, as I mentioned, a real dearth of resi construction in Manningham and across Melbourne at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have any other speakers for the motion? Councillor Anna Chen.
That is one of the most difficult situation I have encountered about the planning application. And I wouldn't dispute about the apartment design guide and wouldn't dispute about the number of the parking available for the residents. And my only concern is about the site coverage of 62.7%. That is actually exceeds the 60% prescribed under the current Manningham planning scheme. And pursuant to the current scheme, Design and Development Overlay Schedule 8, it says development must ensure that the site coverage by buildings does not exceed 60%. When I read the planning scheme provisions, it appears to me that it is a mandatory requirement. But I have done some researches and both other councils' planning decisions, and I know that if a development did not meet the 60% maximum requirement, but if it was reflective of the broader objective, it is commonplace for councils to vary the standard and allow the development to be approved on that basis. And I also researched some VCAT decisions. And I know that in terms of VCAT decision, VCAT said that 60% is discretionary. And I just read one of the quote that from the VCAT decisions, which said, the site coverage at 62% exceeds the 60% sought, noting that 60% is discretionary, and having regard to the landscaping opportunities, the setbacks to boundaries, and the designation of the land within the sub-precinct where the most intense development is sought, I do not refuse the application for this non-compliance, unquote. The proposed development supports the key vision objectives, which encourage a higher density. So ideally, I would like to see developments to comply with 60% site coverage and give more open spaces for residents and more respectful to the amenity of the neighborhood character. But I also need to take into account of the precedents in front of me into my decision making. So on balance, I reluctantly support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have any other speakers for the motion? I'll put that to a vote. All of those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Item 10, City Planning. 10.1, Shopping Centres Upgrade Plan. Do I have a mover?
I move the motion, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Carly Lang. And do I have a seconder? Councillor Michelle Kleinert. Councillor Lang, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillors, I am pleased to bring forth the shopping centres upgrade. We know that our shopping centres are the life and they help our local businesses. We also know they host an array of activities, but on top of places to go shopping. They could be performers, they could be events, and sometimes they're even local business festivals. This motion this evening talks about us looking at those shopping centres that mean so much to our community and looking at upgrading those so that they are fit for purpose for our community and meet their needs, as well as local traders and businesses. So we're looking at upgrading 4 neighbourhood activity centres and 10 local activity centres. What's the purpose for us in doing this, councillors? Well, it's to improve vibrancy through traffic, drainage, landscape, parking improvements and functionality, taking into account urban design components in relation to each local or neighbourhood character area. All these improvements are to engage and improve the visitation of our shopping centres so that they can be enjoyed, safe and functional. They look at things like seating, car parking, landscaping, footpaths, lighting, the shopping experience, which council can support. And council has also committed councillors to working with private owners of shopping centres to support them in their vibrancy as well. You know that our shopping centres play an important role in our local community. So therefore, it is important that we support employment opportunities as well as safe access to services within our shopping centres. I bring to your attention the upgrades and the characteristics of those upgrades. They can be minor, they can be medium or moderate upgrades, or major upgrades. In our minor upgrades, they may be things like landscaping, footpaths, tables, bicycle infrastructure. Moderate might include the traffic and car parking upgrades, more considerable landscaping and streetscaping improvements. And then our major may look at the substantial change to the movement and the functionality of the shopping centre, looking for a long-time vision. So, councillors, tonight this motion is about looking at our 10 activity centres and looking at their minor and major works that have been suggested and our other activity centres and the schedule for them. Because we really are about engaging our traders, our neighbours and our broader community when we do these individual shopping upgrades. And this is important to our community and it addresses their needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Councillor Kleiner, would you like to speak to?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's a fantastic plan, Madam Mayor, councillors, and I think something that we should all endorse tonight, just taking into account the extensive planning that's gone into this, and considering of those that are on this plan, the 4 identified, not in their actual order, with it being Donburn, Jackson Court, Templestowe and Macedon, which will be of delight to some of those in the gallery tonight. The plan will assist in driving council's investment in neighbourhood and local activity centres with greater transparency, coordination and consistency. It'll support the development of local business, which is important to us, considering we have a high number of people that work and run their business from home, so their second office is often in one of these vibrant centres, so it's great. It's our continued investment into these places and spaces that benefit from cradle to grave. When you look at our centres and how well they are loved locally, they're fantastic. We're very lucky in Manningham that across all our centres there's great character and vibrancy of community, and just keeping with the upgrade and planning of that is such an important thing. So it's a great plan and something to be endorsed, thanking the officers for their time and efforts to get this and put this together. So thank you.
Thank you, councillors. Do I have any speakers against the motion? Do I have any other speakers for the motion? Councillor Lightbody.
Yes, thank you. I think this plan is great, and it really shows our commitment to continuous uplift of our shopping centres. Michelle, Councillor Klein mentioned some as well, but while those are major upgrades, all shopping centres will within this plan and have minor upgrades, from small infrastructure improvements such as bicycle parking to ongoing maintenance of landscaping and trees. And this plan really ensures that we're improving our infrastructure and supporting our local businesses by making their centres more accessible and more attractive places to visit, to shop, to spend time. Lots of people visit their shopping centres as a recreational activity on the weekend. They get coffees, they meet their friends. And during the week as well, these are also places where people do their grocery shopping, their homeware shopping. And I think it's really important that these places are places that people want to spend time and can easily get to. So I'm really excited to be supporting this plan tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor. Do I have any other speakers for the motion? Councillor Anna Chen.
Manningham is the home for about 10 neighborhood shopping activity centers and 28 local activity centers. Just imagine the numbers. Traditionally, neighborhood activity centers provide a limited mix of uses to meet local convenience need, but they are evolving, and now the community become a community hubs and meeting places for residents. And our local small activity centers generally comprise only a small number of shops to serve the convenience of local needs of the immediate residents. So from time to time, we have heard complaints about, well, how about our shopping local street that hasn't been actually being upgraded, and lack of cares from council, or just like a loved child, and when they see that a lot of money spent on the big shopping centers. But now this is proposed in front of us is the action plan. That is a long-term plan, and that will just to show council's commitment that we actually care about all our shopping centers, no matter the size, big or small. So I think that there is a really great plan, that because the plan assesses the existing conditions and also the opportunities and of our shopping centers, and make recommendations for the future upgrade works. So it is also a very transparent documents and actions in front of our community, and also show the commitment of our councils to the local shopping centers. So I actually love the shopping center plan, and I hope that our fellow councillors also support the plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other speakers for the motion? Councillor Stephen Mayne.
I'd also like to commend the officers. This is a compelling document, remarkable statistics at every level, and I'd encourage everyone to read it, because it's a really impressive level of report, of detail. I do think there'll be a challenge for us as to funding it, because we are a very important sort of landlord, planner, regulator, marketer. You've got the sort of the hybrid model of the private landlords at the Westfield Pines, Bulleen Plaza, Devon Plaza level, and then you've got the council streets, the council-owned car parks. And this has got such depth. It goes down to every single little back street centre that's got 4 tenants. If you've got 4 tenants, you're in the plan. We're looking at you, we're caring about you, we're looking to invest in you. I do think we'll also need at some point to step up our investment in trader association capacity, coordination and working together with council. I think we've learned some lessons out of the recent Macedon Square process. At a personal level, I'd actually support council buying the odd shop or property within many of these centres where we are the prime player as part of that sort of skin in the game alignment. We are a very large natural land and building and property owner in Manningham. With this data,
Excuse me, Councillor. A point of order is being called.
We're not. It's irrelevant. We're talking about shopping centre plan, not buying property.
I'll uphold that point of order. Continue, Councillor.
Okay, I've said enough.
Thank you. Do I have any other speakers for the motion? I will put that to a vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 10.2, Community Local Law 2023. Do I have a mover?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to make an amendment to it. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation with the following amendment to the community local law, with clause 42C to be amended to read: C, the septic system to be inspected and improved by a licensed plumber in accordance with the requirements of the domestic waste water management plan.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll just pause while we just take time to capture that. Oh, okay. It's 49C. So
49C, Madam Mayor.
So, councillors, that's been circulated to all of you via email if you want to have time to review that. We'll just wait, Councillor. We'll just pause while people have time to review it on their emails, Councillor. So if you just indicate to me, councillors, when you've had time to review it, and then we will. Have you all had time to review the amendment, councillors? No? I'll just wait for Councillor Goff. Yeah. Thank you. So, Councillor Carly Lang, so you've moved the amendment?
Yep.
Do we have a seconder for that amended?
I second the motion.
Thank
The
you.
amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chen. Councillor Lang, would you like to speak to the...
Thank you. I will speak to the amendment first, and then I will speak to the officer's recommendation, because it is the officer's recommendation with the amendment that we're moving tonight, councillors. The amendment comes into just making the wording a little bit clearer, because within the domestic waste water management plan, it works in accordance with either annually or every 3 years. And we originally had the wording of the septic tank is to be inspected annually, but then that was a bit of a discrepancy when it said annually to 3 years in the management plan. So we've just said now it's to be inspected and approved according to the requirements of the domestic waste water management plan. So it was just to make sure that we are being very transparent and clear to the community, and there's no discrepancies. With the remainder of our officer's recommendation, this is a fantastic document that details our obligations to be able to keep our community and the amenity safe. This has gone out for public consultation, and due to the public consultation, there has been feedback which has been incorporated in our final copy tonight. This has gone to the CFA and the FRV as our fire authorities, and according to that, changes have been made. So we have been able to give a definition to dangerous, to what dangerous is. We've been able to confirm caravans are not included on vehicles that require a permit on residential land over 6 months, over a 6 month period. We've also looking at the wording so that people know that they no longer will require a permit to burn, but they must also follow the fire authorities' recommendations, and therefore only be burning in the burning period, allowed burning period, and not on days that the CFA have total fire bans. The other things that I wanted to bring to our attention was looking at conduct on our council land, and there was a bit of feedback that this might prevent our social gatherings. That is not the case, that social and recreational events can still occur on our council land, but council does have the ability to take action against inappropriate behaviour or danger to property. It also looked at the amenity and health and safety of our community through looking at new provisions on our buildings, and to make sure that the conduct within it does not give any community, create any community hazards or risk to our community. It also looked at a few things like heavy and large vehicles, that they need to have a permit if they are kept on residential land, that looked at substantially heavy and large vehicles, and again, it wasn't according to caravans. And it also looked at the audible alarms, so making sure that they're not a nuisance. So when they go off and are turned off within 10 minutes, that they can't be heard beyond the boundary in that time. It looked at the newer chimney provision, so that we are looking at the ash and smoke and dust does not create a health risk for our community. And we are also noting that our better upkeep of our bins. So they're looking that they're not filled too overfull or inappropriate materials within it. So we also, and the last thing, councillors, looks at also animals and community safety and looking at the welfare of our animals. So yes, you can increase the animals on your property according to the size of your property, but you need to do this with a permit, and then you also need to have the new animal containment provisions, which make sure that animal accommodation is clean, kept secure and free from materials that attract any vermin. So all in all, these changes are due to our community feedback. They are responses to our customers and our residents, and they are all to keep our amenities, both on council land, in private land, safe for our residents, safe for our neighbouring community, and in line with our health and safety as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Councillor Chen, did you want to speak to the amendment?
And Councillor Lang have already highlighted most of the clauses contained in our new community local law. And just be mindful that our current community law 2013 is due to sunset on the 30th of June 2023. So Council resolved last year on 27th of September to exhibit the proposed draft community local law to seek feedback from our community. So there were 2 months community engagement process that conclude on the 15th of December 2022. So in response to the community feedback, some changes have been made, but I just wish to highlight a couple of points. The definition of dangerous has been further refined to include vegetation that poses a safety risk to a public place or a fire risk. So I'm very cautious about the definition, so I just want to read it out. The current definition that dangerous includes the presence or storage of any item, matter, thing, condition likely to cause a risk to health or safety, excluding trees on privately owned property unless such trees poses a safety to a public place or constitute a fire risk. That is a very detailed definition that for the future, for the enforcement purpose, that would be very clear to our community to follow. And I also wish to take this opportunity to highlight another proposed new clause, Clause 25. That is in response to the complaints and concerns councils has been receiving about unsightly and dangerous buildings across our municipality. I'm happy to advise that the new condition of land provision has been included to enable council to take appropriate action if land and buildings are dangerous. There is also one important factor about the amendment made to the offences provision. The offences provision that removes the corporate veil. So the new provision indicate that the directors and officers of a corporation also commit an offence if that corporation commits an offence under this local law. Previously, we only provide provisions to govern the non-compliance from an individual. So I think that the amendment covered the corporation as well. So I wish to take this opportunity to thank officers for their hard work and also working extra hard to ensure that we have considered community concerns and feedback and the appropriate balance. I'm very I just
Thank you,
wish to
Councillor
highlight the
Time.
balance achieved. Yeah, thank you for everything. Yeah, and
Thank
the
you,
community
Councillor.
feedback.
Do I have any speakers against? Any other speakers for? Councillor Stephen Mayne.
Yeah, so this is a once-a-term opportunity, councillors, to sign off on the local laws. Very impressed with councillors Chen and Lang with the detail and their enthusiasm for the detail in this. Local laws is one, in my view, sort of for the aficionados. Really gets down into every last nook and cranny of council operations and regulations. I agree with Councillor Chen that I think we've broadly got the balance right. You'll have people talking about they want to be libertarian, leave us alone. You'll have others saying we're too much of an anti-state. And if you look at the tweaks and the moves in this, it has gone both ways. So we're taking away the requirement for a permit for a closed bin on private land. We're taking away the requirement for a permit for burning off in some circumstances when you live on a private property of more than 2,500 square metres. But equally, we are strengthening our ability to intervene on matter coming out of people's private chimneys, because that can obviously affect the amenity of the neighbours, and I think that's a good move. Should we be requiring permits for buskers on council land? Well, we are now. That's a move we've made. Similarly, we're strengthening the idea of commercial photographers operating on council land. The previous rules talked about filming, and we're now strengthening that for commercial photographers. Could be interesting when we get into the wedding photo grey area there. But it really is one for the who love the detail. I'd like to call out Macquarie lawyers. They came in and briefed us. I thought they were really impressive with how they were across the detail, working with our excellent legal team led by Andrew McMaster and Carrie right across the detail as well. So we've got to the end of the road, councillors. Too late to change anything now. I think it's a good package. We've got the balance right. I'd like to thank everyone who's been involved, including all the people who took the time to read the detail, make submissions and influence a few of the tweaks and changes that Councillor Lang mentioned.
Thank you, Councillor Stephen Mayne. Any other speakers for the motion? I will put that to a vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Item 10.3, new committees, Livable Places and Spaces Advisory Committee and Historical Societies Working Group endorsed terms of reference. Do I have a mover?
So moved. I move that the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Stephen Mayne. Councillor Goff, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just quickly, this is a bit of a process, but we have, as council, reorganised our committees across the whole of council, and the last parts of that reorganisation are here tonight, I suppose, with the committees, because we've got the Livable Places and Spaces Committee, which is taking over from the Open Space Committee, and the Open Spaces Streetscape Committee has been around for quite a long time, as a combined entity over 15 years, but as the Open Space Committee was the original, I suppose, major strategic planning committee for Manningham, organising the open spaces and putting all the pathways and connections and as an oversight of, I suppose, how we live and work around Manningham. Things have changed. We've got these new committees. We've also got historical societies. And we're now combining, we used to just be on the Doncaster Historical Society, but we've got the historical societies working, and there's now a committee overseeing all of the historical societies, building that connection. So it's part of the structure. This has been announced, I suppose it was last year that it came up, and this is the final thing announcing that the way it's going through and making appointments. To all the people that have been on the previous committees, especially the Open Space Committee, which will be not running anymore. A big thank you to all of the people from the community representatives on that over the many years of that committee, which really has helped Manningham achieve a lot of the goals in its open space development, and look forward to working with everybody here into the future with the new committee setups.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Stephen Mayne, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, just briefly on the historical societies. I'm looking forward to chairing that committee, the Historical Societies Working Group. We're bringing Wonga Park and Warrandyte into the fold because we've previously mainly been dealing with Templestowe and Doncaster. Each of the groups will have 3 nominees on the board. We're going to have 3 community reps, a couple of officers and a councillor chair. We'll meet 4 times a year. Heritage and historical societies is as we get older, it becomes increasingly important. And so I'm really looking forward to engaging with all of the groups, bringing them together and supporting their work as much as we can, particularly as we go into this significant investment we're doing on a new visitor centre at Waldo, where Templestowe and Doncaster is based.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have any speakers against the motion? Do I have any other speakers for the motion? Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to say I'm looking forward to working with councillors and to having Councillor Goff chair the Livable Places and Spaces Advisory Committee. I'm also looking forward to these committees and working group going out to seek expression of interest from the community, because we know that it's really them who have the input and the history there, and we can learn so much from them. And when it comes to livable spaces and places, we want to hear from the people that are actually using them. So I really look forward to the expression period, which will go out mid this year, and we'll be seeking people to join both those groups. I also just wanted to bring to the group with the remind that the livable spaces and places is built on 3 pillars: the passive open space, strategic land use and transport planning, and environmental and urban design. And I know in its first year, it's looking forward to doing some green wedge matters and some urban design and placemaking. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other speakers for the motion? I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? And it's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Item 11, connected communities. There are no reports this evening. Item 12, city services. 12.1, March 2023, Capital Works status report. Do I have a mover?
I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Stephen Mayne. Do I have a seconder?
I second the motion, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Councillor Stephen Mayne, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, so we're now into the sort of financial budget series of items. So this is the Capital Works status report up until the end of March, so for the first 9 months of the year. At the start of the year, we very ambitiously said we were going to do a record $63.2 million Capital Works program, which, as I said, would have been a record by a substantial margin. We're likely to finish around the $51 million mark, so there will be a carry forward of about $10.7 million, and as at the end of March we had spent $30 million. So we're having a fast finish in June, the June quarter, which is a great tradition of local government. In terms of looking at the specific items, obviously we won't be spending the $368 million that was in the budget for Macedon Square, so that's been reallocated. There's been some projects that haven't kicked off, or we haven't quite spent as much as we should. So Fitzsimmons Lane, the Templestowe route, we were looking at the start of the year to spend $2.9 million. We've done $479,000. The new pavilion at the baseball centre in Deep Creek for Doncaster Baseball Club, it will get done, but we were looking at spending the full $3 million this year. We've only spent the 1.8. We haven't spent the $75,000 on the Ruffy, on the Waldo Cafe that we were thinking of, and the Park Orchards Community House, $100,000 is also hasn't happened. Hepburn Reserve, we have carried forward most of the $2.136 million, but it is cleared, demolished, and so that will be delivered promptly in the coming financial year. So the challenge for us in a strong financial position without any major projects since we've opened Mullum Stadium 5 or 6 years ago is how do you deliver a record Capital Works program with so many small projects? And it is a lot of small projects to manage because we haven't got the big $80 million arts centre like Whitehorse. It is a record program with a lot of small projects, and that is quite challenging to manage. So second year in a row, we will have a $10 million underspend. We're not being quite as ambitious in our budget for next year. But I guess the overall message is that most of these projects will still be done. It's been challenging with COVID and cost of construction and planning and consultation and all those issues that sometimes slow the wheels of local government down. But it's a very detailed report. You can actually see where, for instance, some of the Macedon Square monies, which projects they have been reallocated to. If you read the detail of the report, it is remarkably transparent compared to other levels of government. So I'd encourage people to get into the detail, know that we have ambitions, know that we're keen to set records with capital. We're in a strong financial position, and look forward to cranking up the projects in the period ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Stephen Mayne. Councillor Carly Lang, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you. I'll speak quickly because Councillor Stephen Mayne did a very good job there of going through the detail, so well done. I just wanted to thank officers for the tireless work and commitment that they've been putting towards the Capital Works program, especially under some challenging and responsive systems and time constraints. It has never been harder to get resources, and it is often hard to get contractors. You can tender for jobs a couple of times and still not receive anyone tendering for the position. So I really do thank our officers for being persistent and continuing and working with any shovel-ready jobs that they've got, anything they've got ready to be able to do. I have actually physically noted new and improved street furniture around, especially seating along paths and streets. I've also noted lighting and netting upgrades. I've noticed that the Yarra Trail linkages has been coming along, and I've noticed lots of road sealing throughout our municipality. So congratulations to officers for this Capital Works update.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Do I have any speakers against the motion? Do I have any other speakers for the motion? I will put that to a vote. All those in favour? Thank you, councillors. That's carried unanimously. Item number 13, experience and capability. 13.1, Manningham Quarterly Report, Quarter 3, January to March 2022 to 23. Do I have a mover?
I move that the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Laura Mayne. And do I have a seconder? Councillor Chen. Thank you. Councillor Laura Mayne, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Just briefly, this quarterly report captures our financial and capital works progress and performance of the January to March quarter. In terms of capital works, in our third quarter, we spent $30.2 million, which is only 48% of our program budget. That being said, only 9% of the projects are expected to be carried forward into the next financial year. As can be expected, this is largely impacted by the current market conditions, making it more difficult to source contractors, secure materials, longer timeframes due to labour shortages and other causes of delay. Financially, at this quarter, we had a $4.1 million operating surplus. Factors that were favourable included vacancies, that's not really that favourable, some capital grants and utility savings. Some factors which were unfavourable tended to be less developer contributions, more software expenses to adjust to the current climate, and less fines and fees that were expected. I'd like to thank the officers for their work preparing this report. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Laura Mayne. Councillor Chen, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just basically touch on by way of example, how difficult the current market situation. For example, we want to secure long lead time to secure the available contractor, but also the materials is a big thing. And I'm surprised to read the report that, for example, the current wait time for drainage pipes, we need to wait for at least 6 months. So that is. You can see the impact in terms of our project delivery. But overall, even in this current difficult situation, and we have managed our finance quite well, and we are in a good financial position. We continue to deliver what matters most to our community. That is a lot of small projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have any speakers against the motion? Any other speakers for the motion? Councillor Stephen Mayne.
Yes, just to pick up on a couple of points. Councillor Lorimer mentioned the slight underspend on employees and staffing with the difficult challenge in the labour market to fill vacancies. It's actually quite a big number at 2.33 million is the likely underspend. And we were hearing earlier that our likely budget for workers' compensation in the coming year is going to be up by potentially $500,000 because the state government's just announced a 40% increase in work cover premiums to 1.8% per year to close $1 billion hole in their scheme. So there are swings and roundabouts. That's a blow, obviously, that the state's imposing a massive across-the-board increase in premiums that will hit us in the future. But on the positive, we've underspent by 2.33 million this year. So that creates a bit of a buffer. And speaking of buffers, I noticed that the cash balance at the end of March was $85.7 million, which is a healthy figure. So I think the report notes that we're earning $205,000 a month at the moment from interest, because with rising interest rates, we're one of the few parties that is happy with rising interest rates because we've got a very healthy cash balance, and we're actually going to be 1.36 million ahead of budget in interest earnings. So councillors, we're in a strong position to budget compassionately and generously in the period ahead, given our situation. One other point I noticed that it was disappointing that Aquarina was finishing $555,000 short on budget for the year. So as we move to change contracts, it has not quite, in the final year of the current contract, it's not quite met the financial targets that we set in the budget 12 months ago.
Thank you, councillor. Do I have any other speakers for the motion? I will put that to a vote. All those in favour? And it's carried unanimously. Thank you. Item number 14, Chief Executive Officer. 14.1, Proposed 10-Year Financial Plan 2023-24 to 2032-33. Do I have a mover?
Yes, I'd like to move that. The
Thank
recommendation be adopted.
Thank you, councillor Conlon. And do I have a seconder?
I second the motion, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, councillor Lang. Councillor Conlon, would you like to speak to the motion?
Certainly. Well, this is going out for public consultation, councillors, so that we can come back at the end of June. As Councillor Mann just mentioned, though, it's already out of date because it doesn't take into account the exorbitant increase in work cover. That'll have a long-term impact on our budget. But I'd like to just talk about the objectives and then talk about how we're going towards that. So the objectives of this plan is to be a prudent, have a prudent balance of services for the community and financial sustainability. And it also notes that we need to increase the ability to fund capital works in the future. And among the financial challenges identified in the report is rate capping, which we all know about. But there's also, it mentions specifically the renewal of ageing infrastructure as a challenge that we're going to have to face in the future, and thus the need for increased ability to fund capital works. And it also notes another financial challenge, which is the increased demand for services with our expectations of our community as well as a growing population. So with all those challenges, I guess I don't agree with the previous speaker that we have got a lot of cash to be compassionate and I can't remember whatever the words are. We've got to be financially sustainable. That's what we are here for. And if we're not financially sustainable, we could end up like the state government, which, according to their latest budget, Victorians are paying $22 million a day in interest to cover their debt. And just to put that in context, what that means for every single household in Victoria is $3,300 in interest, which is 50%, actually 55% more than our average rates. So just so that we have an idea of what the state government is doing, to give us some context about how good our...
Councillor, I'm going to call a point of order. It's irrelevant, the state government's budget.
Well, I'm okay. I'd like to make a comparison
Councillor,
between
I'm calling a point of
Sure.
order. So you can continue
Oh,
talking about our 10-year financial
our
plan.
10-year financial plan doesn't rank up debt, which would then create an interest impost on our ratepayers, which we cannot afford. So I think it's a great budget, and I think that the officers have done a great job forecasting 10 years. I do note that this year, though, we aren't meeting our underlying surplus goal partly because we're not passing on the full waste charges to residents. So we've had that discussion, but I do hopefully as the years go by and we get FOGO on track and we get less waste to landfill, our waste charges will be covered by our waste revenue will be covered by will cover the actual cost of getting rid of it. So with that, I would like to endorse this and hopefully we support it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Carly Lang, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you. Just briefly, because Councillor Collin has mentioned the priorities. I just wanted to reassure our community that the time that they spent on that community vision and the countless hours and days that they deliberated on the wording and the direction for council, that we should congratulate our officers, because this proposed 10-year financial plan is very much based on our community vision of that financially sustainable council, so that we can respond to financial challenges that come up in our future. It also looks at not diminishing any of our long-term financial stability. It looks at being able to focus on our council priorities and based on projects that come along in that. And it also looks at our consistent funding that we need for technology and innovation. I just wanted to highlight that there's also financial direction on addressing climate change and also helping our community meet their community net zero targets as well. Impressed and happy to see the forecast in the 10-year financial plan for the introduction and maintenance of FOGO, and also for many other investment in core infrastructure, such as footpaths, roads, drainage, open spaces, and all to enhance the livability and amenity of our municipality. So therefore, as a council, as a community, we should be very proud of our 10-year financial plan.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Do I have any speakers against the motion? Do I have any other speakers for the motion? I will put that to a vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Item 14.2, proposed 2023-24 budget. Do I have a mover?
I move that the motion be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Lightbody. Councillor Goff, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you very much, and I'm really pleased to go up here and do a Chief Executive Officer report, because they don't come out often. The thing is, and I'm saying this is a bit of a joke, the thing is that it's interesting it comes up here as the 10-year plan and the budget, because basically it covers everything that we do, and the CEO is held responsible by the state to make sure that our council goes through the mandated processes, and that's what we're doing at the moment. In fact, our timeline, Mayor, is on target, because we have to get our budget adopted by the end of this financial year to go into the next financial year to be submitted to the local government office, the Minister for Local Government. So we need to go through those processes. Our council, from last year at meeting, have been in discussions about priorities and where we're going to spend the money that we get. It's not our money, it's the community's money. And it's very important that we actually spend that money wisely and not just frivolously give it away to a whim or a fancy or whatever we think is the latest trend. It's hard-earned money by people, and people are doing it hard. And in fact, may I say that people will be doing much harder this coming year as interest rates rise. For the most vulnerable people, the most vulnerable people, those being people that have bought houses in the last few years and have great debt onto that. They are the vulnerable people of our new community now. They're the new vulnerable group. But having said that, we've got an outline here of how we're going to spend the money for this next year, fulfilling the obligations that we have committed to our community according to our council plan. And basically, this document will set out our spendings. And it's interesting as you read through it, it talks about the principles of our, I'm not going to go into the actual detail here, but it does talk about the principles of how we come up with how we're going to spend our money. And then we've got different allocations. We say allocations according to particular areas. Allocations, and it's interesting, the paragraphs in there are allocations according to, I suppose, our council plan under the headings, of the 4 headings or 5 headings of the divisions, livable cities, and all of the things that it's expressed in giving it a quantum there, but also basically coming out and going down to at the final level, the detail of every spend in our budget. Now, if we look through it, there are a couple of things. We are putting the rates up by 3.5%. That is a general overall rate rise for us. That is the one that the government has permitted local government to increase by, but it is under the CPI of the year. So in actual dollar terms of what we're going to be able to spend, we will be in that term spending we're getting a little bit less in than the actual costs are coming up. But that's how everybody in our community is facing their future. We are all not having as much money as other people have. We are going to be in a bit harder times. And also, in cognizant of that, with the waste charge, if we were to meet it, the waste charge, the landfill levy alone, and that's just one component, but it is a major component of waste removal. The landfill levy has gone up by 6% this year. So that's another impost onto increases in the landfill levy. Like 20 years ago, 15 years ago, we didn't have a landfill levy. And now it's someone's got it, no one's got it, $140 a tonne or $150 a tonne. A massive impost to the people living in our cities to pay this fund that is a revenue for, it goes to state government, but it's a revenue that they have to spend in their areas, but it's one that is borne by our communities. We're putting that fee up by $4. Now, that is a cost recovery fund, and it's deliberately done that way in our council, but we are subsidising that a bit this year to spread out those increasing costs over a couple of years so that it doesn't have that great impost of people. And I think it's important that as we've put this budget together, we are very cognisant of the state of situation of the people in our community and the hard-felt increases in costs, be it from the supermarket to all other things that have gone up in their lives, and interest rates are becoming a major killer. Now, it's much harder today than when I was paying the 18%, because I was paying 18% on 60,000. You're paying a smaller percentage, but it's on $500,000, $800,000, and that is unaffordable in many ways as people are going up. So people are going to be doing a lot harder.
Councillor Time.
Madam Mayor, I hope we all support the budget.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. Councillor Lang, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. Madam Mayor, I'll just mention...
No, I'm sorry, Councillor Lang. It was Councillor Lightbody that seconded the motion. My apologies, Councillor Lightbody. Would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
My apologies, everyone. I was just testing you all to see who was following the order, and you're all listening. Thank you, Councillor Lightbody.
Thank you. And I'd like to reiterate what Councillor Goff said about the most vulnerable people being the newest homeowners in Manningham. I've recently will be paying my first rates bill coming up, and interest rates have definitely meant I'll be paying a lot more on my mortgage than I expected to when I signed the contract for my apartment off the plan a few years ago. But I'm really excited about this budget, including the big increased spend on our climate change action plan and circular economy initiatives, which I think is really great, reflecting on my failed small amendment to the budget last year on the topic. And some of the projects that this includes some solar shading over one of our major car parks, Aquarina, I think, which will both support our energy initiatives and net zero target, but as well as build community resilience through reducing the risks associated in car parks when we have summer heat and sun and heat waves, which is a very big topic when summer comes around. I haven't seen any of these in metropolitan Melbourne yet, so it might be a first, I'm not sure. But there's definitely some good examples of this when you drive out into our regional towns and cities throughout Victoria and probably Australia as well. Also included are commitments to bring forward funding and construction of new public toilets where they don't currently exist. And those locations are in accordance with our public toilet strategy, as well as increased funding for our bus shelter program and our tree planting program, among a number of other initiatives that this budget is looking to put money into. So I might leave it there and let some other councillors speak.
Thank you, Councillor Lightbody. Do I have any speakers against the motion? Do I have any other speakers for the motion? Councillor Lang, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Lightbody. I just wanted to bring to attention some of the significant or the key highlights that weren't mentioned. I just note that this budget is being really conscious about those cost living pressures that Councillor Gough was talking about. And it looks at the increase that our low rebate that we can give for a low rebate and healthcare, but it also comes up with initiatives to be able to support everybody's cost of living through having the lower waste charge than cost recovery, also looking at financial hardship provisions, and also looking at funding for community-led initiatives through community grants. I also wanted to note that it talks about the $53.9 million capital works program, looking at our roads and bridges, looking at maintaining our parks and open spaces and streetscapes, looking at property works and acquisitions, looking at our drainage, so $5 million for drainage, looks at our footpaths and our cycleways, especially it's been nice to note the main Yarra Trail, which will be able to take our residents from Warrandyte to the city and anywhere in between on foot or by bicycle. And also a $3.9 million for recreation and community facilities, looking at Wonga Park Netball Court, and looking at the many others, Aquarina 50 million metre pool, Rice Checks Reserve Management Plan, including the Waldo, and Donvale Bowls, Park Orchards Tennis Club, and also looking at our public tennis courts and improvement works. I also note that it has $3 million for plant and equipment, including public artworks, which I know is really important to our art societies of Manningham. But I guess probably for me the most important part, councillors, was seeing the $20 million in our operating budget to maintain our valuable community assets. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Do I have any other speakers for the motion? Yes, Councillor Stephen Mayne.
Can I have an update on what the budget provision is for the funding of community houses? I know we were doing, I think, $65,000 a year at the start of this term for our community houses. What's this budget envisaging for our 5 community houses?
I'm going to ask our Director of Connected Communities, Lee Robson, to respond to that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillors will recall that a budget allocation of $300,000 was made for the next financial year to make a payment to each of the anchor houses. This is for
Thank you, Lee. Did you want to speak to the motion, Councillor Mayne?
Yes, so I'll be voting in favour of the budget. I do have some comments. The data, again, is very interesting. So the valuation of our 53,000 properties in Manningham, and remember 94% of our rates revenue is residential. I don't think there's any other council which is so residential-centric as Manningham. But the valuation for the lot is down by 490 million to 66.67 billion. So that's the capital improved value of all rateable properties in Manningham. And because that's fallen by 1.2%, we've had to slightly increase the rate in the dollar charge to achieve the 3.5% increase in the average rate, which is the regulated cap set by the government. So therefore, we're charging residents 0.15532% of the valuation of their house, and it takes 644 years to pay the value of your house in rates at the average rate of, I think it's 1,950. So it used to be 675 years last year. So it's still incredible value. We are absolutely a relatively low rate council. Over in our neighbours in Burundara, you're looking at an average of around 2,600 versus our 1,900. But I do want to take up the challenge with others talking about other levels of government that are in a terrible financial position. We need to deal with our financial position, and our financial position is very strong. And I do think we have some capacity to perhaps be a little bit more generous when we get to the final budget that we approve at the June council meeting. I personally think $100,000 in capital works for 24 kinders, including the major project going on at Donvale, is light on. And I'd like to see a final budget where we might do 400,000 or 500,000 in capital works for our 24 kinders. That, you can get a few little bits of carpet and some leaky roofs, but really, we're the landlord for 24 kinders. We've got $85 million in the bank. I think we can do better than 100,000 as a general allocation, as sort of a business as usual. So I think, other examples, we've heard about community houses. Burundara gives 100,000 a year to their community houses, and we're doing 65,000. Over in Banyule, they spend $1 million a year supporting their traders. We're not doing anything to build our traders up. So I think we have the capacity with this very strong position to do some significant things on cost of living, to forgive debts to sporting clubs that might be struggling. And I just hope that we get some submissions from the community and we can tweak the final budget and actually be a little bit less sort of conservative given our overall strong financial position.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have any other speakers for the motion? I will put that to a vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Item 14.3, informal meetings of councillors. Do I have a mover? Councillor Conlon?
I'd like to move that the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Kleinert. Councillor Conlon, would you like to speak to the motion? Councillor Kleinert?
No, Madam Mayor.
Do I have any speakers against? Any other speakers for? I will put that to vote. All those in favour? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. Item 14.4, documents for sealing. Do I have a mover? Councillor Kleinert.
That the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Conlon. Councillor Conlon, would you like to speak to the motion? Councillor Conlon, would you like to speak to the motion? All those in favour? And that is again carried unanimously. Item number 15, notices of motion. 15.1, notice of motion by Councillor Thomas Lightbody, notice of motion number 2 of 2023. Do I have a mover?
That the motion be adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Lightbody. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Laura Mayne. Councillor Lightbody, would you like to speak to your motion?
Yes, I'll be pretty brief. This motion is essentially a data collecting exercise. The census data is very important in all the services that councils provide, informing health services. Essentially, it's the data that everyone uses, from urban planners to social workers and social support workers. So what I'm essentially doing in this motion is requesting that we support the inclusion of questions around the LGBTQIA plus community that have not previously been included in the census that was conducted last year. So this motion essentially asks us to write to our local state and federal members requesting support for this change. And it would be essentially supporting similar motions and submissions made to the review by some of our neighbouring councils, including our Eastern Region group councils such as Monash and Maroondah. Yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you, Councillor Lightbody. Councillor Lorimer, would you like to speak to the motion? Do I have any speakers against the motion? Do I have any other speakers for the motion? Well, I will put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, Councillor Lightbody. Item number 16, urgent business. And there are no items of urgent business. Item number 17, councillor reports and question time. So, councillors, I am going to provide a report. Councillors, I would like to acknowledge the recent resignation of Ron Kitchingman, OAM, former mayor and councillor and recipient of the key to the City of Manningham. Ron recently resigned from the Doncaster board after 13 years. I would like to highlight a few of the many significant achievements Ron has seen and been part of during his time on the board. The relocation of Doncaster offices here to MC Squared, opening of additional op shops, successfully obtaining funding to conduct psychological counselling for children, appointment of Dr. Rosie Batty AO as the official patron of Doncaster, significant increase to emergency flood relief counselling and mental health services, and more than 34,000 raised at the 2019 mayoral ball, just to name a few accomplishments. On behalf of Council, I congratulate Ron on his years of service and dedication to Doncaster and to the broader Manningham community, and wish Ron all the very best for the future. I would also like to congratulate the Rotary clubs within Manningham, the Rotary Club of Manningham, Doncaster and Templestowe, and the Warrandyte Donvale Rotary clubs for the really successful night last night we had at the International Rotary Convention. It's only been to Melbourne in this time, it's the first time it's been here in 30 years, and we had a very successful event upstairs in our function room with more than 120, 130 international Rotary delegates. So it was wonderful. I was very proud to show off Manningham and very proud to welcome them all to Manningham. So thank you to the Rotary clubs within Manningham for that night. Do I have any other councillors with reports or questions? Councillor Lang.
Thank you. Councillors, I attended David McNeff's retirement last week, and on behalf of Council and the Park Orchards community, I would like to sincerely thank David McNeff for his huge amount of energy and volunteership over the last 30 years to Park Orchard Ratepayers Association, known as PORA, and also to the Park Orchards Community House and Learning Centre. David has served 2 long stints at PORA and has held executive committee roles in this time, such as Treasurer and President. He's also served as Treasurer of the Park Orchards Community House and Learning Centre. David is a great believer in community connection, protecting and improving park orchards, protecting and enhancing the 100 acres, and also making a positive impact on the beautiful place that is Park Orchards. He's a highly intelligent, logical, problem-solving man who's got a very quick wit, and he can sometimes surprise you with just how quickly he can come back with a comment. Sometimes not all politically correct, but he knows when to toe the line. David has been instrumental in keeping the Park Orchards market going and during some challenging times, and there's nothing that he would ask somebody else to do that he wouldn't be willing to do himself. He plays an important part in keeping Park Orchard a community hub, and he is regularly in contact with the community and getting groups together. David has always stood up for people. He's not afraid to say what needs to be said, and he has forged great partnerships and connections with Manningham Council, with ward councillors, and also state and federal members. David is very kind, caring, thoughtful, and a generous person, and everything he does and says
Councillor, time.
comes from the heart. Thank you. He also got an Outstanding Citizenship Award.
Thank you, Councillor, and thank you very much to David, and good luck with the future. Councillor Chen, I know, she's a pro. Councillor Chen.
Thank you. And I just want to put it to the community's notice that the Department of Transport and Planning recently released the summary report from consultation about bus reform in Melbourne's northeastern suburbs, including suburbs in Manningham. The findings is available on the website Engage Victoria, and according to the survey, and over 1,660 surveys were conducted, and 18,390 people visited the Engage Vic website. The findings are that people want frequent and reliable buses that connect to other modes of transport. Although the consultation report does not indicate how the government will respond to the consultation feedback, the government's website, I have a look of the government website, which says they will develop network reform ideas and things later in 2023. So let's have an eye on the development, so whether we can have a better understanding of how the government is going to implement the survey they have been conducting. So I understand that council officers are liaising with the department's officers and to discuss the consultation report and next steps. So keep an eye, and thank you, officers, and just keep reading the departments for any feedback and advocacy abilities, opportunities that we can provide. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chen. Councillor Lightbody.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to ask a question to the officers. Will the officers be responding to the MAV State Council meeting requests for planning approval data and bring a report to our next council meeting outlining that in the past 10 years, how many planning applications we've approved, rejected, but have then been approved by VCAT, how many have not been built following approval, and how many we've been able to negotiate the inclusion of affordable housing from? This is in light of the potential moves by state government to remove councils from the planning process and implicating local government in the affordability crisis by pushing the idea that local governments block housing supply. All the while, these statistics will highlight that the vast majority of applications are approved and how little we've been able to negotiate in terms of affordable housing due to the government's prohibition on local governments making it a compulsory requirement to include affordable housing in developments, and therefore not allowing an easy to implement grower of affordable housing stock, which is widely used overseas in places such as the United Kingdom.
So we have Duncan, Director of City Planning. Duncan Turner, my apologies. Director of City Planning, to provide a response to Councillor Lightbody.
Thank you, Councillor Lightbody, for the question. The data to which you refer is readily available, so we can certainly provide that information to the MAV and provide a report to Council, so that assists in any advocacy efforts on behalf of the sector. Some of the data that is at immediate hand is that over the last financial year, Manningham's issued 670 decisions on planning applications. 613 of those have been permits and only 11 refusals. There's been 51 withdrawals or lapses through that period. In terms of timeliness, 91% of those decisions have been made within 60 days. And for Vic Smart applications, it's 98% of applications have been made in 10 days. So they are substantially better than what's happening across the sector. But of course, planning decisions are more than just timeliness. Efficiency is important. and we recognise the importance of consultation with the local communities and also the outcomes that these decisions are having, because they have a legacy effect of decades into the future. So thank you for the question.
Thank you, Duncan. I'm looking forward to the report. Councillor Goff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just saying to ask if we can, as a council, get some more information from the state government with regard to the North East Link. There is some concern in the community since the state budget that the North East Link, yes, what has been contracted out will go ahead, but the contracts to do parts 2 and 3 of the North East Link haven't really been awarded a contract as yet. And as such, our community and the city of Manningham could be at a great disadvantage if basically the North East Link gets built and then the parts 2 and 3, which is the expansion of a freeway to 21 lanes into the city and an expansion of lanes out to the tunnel, is not instituted. It means that we're going to be funneling in a lot more traffic through the north, coming into the Burundara, where it actually enters the freeway, and making the Eastern Freeway a bit of a blockage there. Bearing in mind that the Eastern Freeway by this stage was supposed to have a link underneath Carlton and Parkville to the other freeways, and that was abandoned over 10 years ago. So basically we're running a situation, and that is a concern. If we can get some details on whether that is not going to happen or is going to happen, and a timeline on that, and what is going to happen when the tunnels are built and we haven't got, if that's the situation occurs, and it won't be this government or it won't be this particular parliament because it's a number of years in the project, but we've got to get us position on what we're going to say about traffic being funnelled into our suburb and blocking up everything there. So I'm just wondering if we can get some further information to be released in the future.
Thank you for the question, Councillor. No, we're certainly aware that that the federal government component of the North East Link program, as we understand it, is part of the 90-day review into the infrastructure investment program. My understanding, my recollection is it's in the order of $1.75 billion. It's a part of that review. But obviously we can provide exact detail on that if council requests it. We can certainly ask the North East Link after that period of time what the intent is. We've had no indication to date that the project scope or intent to proceed with the project has changed, but we'll certainly, during our regular catch-ups with the North East Link, get a greater understanding about what the impact of that might be and report back to council.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Councillor Goff. Do I have any other questions? Councillor Stephen Mayne.
I'd like to support what you said about Ron Kitchingman, Mayor, and point out that I think he has the deepest memory and the longest level of service of anyone still with us. So I remember talking to Ron a year or two ago, and he was talking about the day that Frank Lowy stormed out of this council building in the early 1970s because council was demanding Doncare and the library be built in Westfield in the 1970s. So the legendary founder of Westfield, $8 billion man, Ron still remembers negotiating with him here for the first Westfield outside of New South Wales. And Westfield's obviously now all over the world. I was also going to report back on State Council MAV last Friday at the Town Hall in light of this sort of rumours of the planning grab, which the state, everyone is fearing the state is going to make a big planning grab, as Councillor Lightbody has mentioned, is that there was an overwhelming vote by council delegates to hand back flood mapping to the state. So the state gets us to do, 30 different metro councils all do our own flood mapping. A world of pain politically, just should be one big, central, properly done program. So interesting that the councils across Victoria said last Friday, please, state government, take back flood mapping. We think it more logically sits with you as the controller of the water authorities. And so fingers crossed that we don't get a ridiculous grab. That data that Duncan Turner just mentioned is very strong for Manningham. We are a responsible council. We efficiently process planning. We don't make frivolous claims to VCAT. We've got a good record. We can be trusted as a planning authority based on our record, as can the vast majority of councils across Melbourne.
Thank you, councillor. Any other councillors want to raise a point or make a question? No. Well, we will move on. Thank you, councillors, for all of your inputs. Item number 18, confidential reports. Do I have a mover? Councillor Kleinert.
The council closed the meeting to the public pursuant to sections 66(1) and 66(2)A of the Local Government Act 2020 to consider the following item. Item 18.1, Manningham Open Space Strategy Implementation.
Thank you, councillor. Do I have a seconder?
I second the motion, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, councillor Carly Lang. All those in favour? And that is carried. Thank you, councillors. So we will now be closing this meeting to members of the public and end the live stream to consider this confidential report. Thank you very much for those in the gallery for joining us this evening and for those in the live stream report.